admissions director told me that these particular letters are very cruel. These particular letters are very cold. Why? Because it puts law school applicants into a state where they're not able to do anything. Almost to the degree, it's almost as if you should just go ahead and reject the students as opposed to have the students literally dangling in the air waiting to hear nothing. So if in fact you have got hold letters, I've seen students, some of my students, get hold letters from schools like Thurgood Marshall School of Law, Hawaii Law School, and also a couple of law schools up north. And what I've told them and what I will tell you is that if you get a hold letter from a law school, we want you guys to treat it like a rejection. So if in fact something does happen by surprise, it'll be a blessing. So we don't want to put you guys in a situation where you're putting all your eggs in one basket. What's going on, fam? How we doing, bro?
What's going on? What's going on? How's everybody doing today?
Oh, man, every day is a blessing. I know down over here in the Lou fam, it is cold. It's not New York cold. How is it where you at, bro?
Hey, I'm in Chicago, man. It's stay being cold here. We only get a good 2 months out the year that's pretty warm. And summertime shy is definitely one to remember, but most of the year is cold. It's cold.
I definitely thought about you, though, when I saw on the news when they were having the mayor of Chicago, and he was talking about the Bears moving to Indiana.
Yeah.
And
Man, it's happening. It's been a sad week for the city. It's been a sad week for the city.
But nevertheless, we love our football, and I hope the only Bears I know are Chicago. But that's the sign that we getting old. We starting to see cities get teams that never had them before. But nevertheless, I want to give you the floor to go ahead and introduce yourself, and I look forward to an opportunity to jump into some questions.
Absolutely. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Attorney Demetrius McLeod, also known as the Legal Sniper, and I am based out of Chicago. I was one of the top law students at Howard Law for my class. I attended
HU,
the Howard University School of Law. I matriculated from law school, went into big law, was in big law for many years. I practiced mostly corporate big law, private equity, M&A, mergers and acquisitions. I did that for a number of years before transitioning into my own practice and just leading the way ever since. So it's been really, really a rewarding experience. Most things that I do within this space is mentoring aspiring lawyers, Black lawyers, lawyers that look like me and you. So it's an honor to be here. Honestly, it's one of the things that I think gives me purpose in this space more than anything. So it's been an honor.
Because I think one of the things that's so important, and as you and I both know, oftentimes in this legal field, when we look around, we don't see a lot of people who look like us. Yeah. And oftentimes, internally, we find ourselves maybe initially being like, I guess this isn't a place for me. Or maybe I'm not supposed to be in this space. And the amazing thing is you got that great foundation at Howard Law School to help you get that reminder that, oh, you belong in every damn room you're supposed to be in. And we studying that, we going to shine. And I think oftentimes, especially when you start this journey, you're looking for a sense of belonging. I want to ask you, when you first had that inkling, man, I think this lawyer life may be for me. When did you fall in love with law? When did you realize, oh, we about to do this?
I feel like I always say, like, I had to become the lawyer that I never seen growing up. It wasn't many people who looked like me who was in the space. So I really did fall in love with the idea of figuring out how to become what I didn't see. So I fell in love with it at a very young age. It was a time where, I knew I was exploring what, you're asked the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And most times, we will say many things as a kid, but when it becomes a lot more real as you become more of an adult, you really have to figure out, okay, what would my life look like and what could I be good at? And a lawyer was one of those things, but I never saw them growing up. Now, I'm originally from Detroit. I've been in Chicago for a very long time, and this is definitely home, but I was originally from the inner cities of Detroit, and I didn't see them often. But I think my mom, right, like my mom was the person that seen many things in me that I didn't see in myself. And she began to change up my environment and switch up the environments that I would enter into so that I could see more people, that did things that we thought were unimaginable at the time. So, that was like one of the things that I really had to become, right? Like becoming me, like I had to really emulate what I never saw. And I fell in love with it at a very young age. I was mentored, which is, I think, why mentorship is a very important thing for me. I was mentored by a guy named Tony Jones. He was a lawyer in Detroit. He was a lawyer for many things, but an entertainment lawyer for some of the Detroit Pistons. And that looked great to me. I loved everything that he was about, how he went about his practice, and it was something that I really wanted to make sure I kind of became as I matriculated through high school and then undergrad, and then it became more and more real, having to prepare for the LSAT and figuring
Yeah.
out what that looked like. And so having somebody to go to and talk to about those things that weren't far from your reach was life changing.
Because I think the thing that's so important for so many of us out there, if I could see somebody who I'm able to identify doing what I want to do, I think the first step is making it look real,
That's
making
right.
it seem reachable. Be like, oh, this is this brother, this sister, or whoever is from where I'm
Mhm.
from. Goes east. We have the same favorite restaurants. I'm able
Mhm.
to identify with him, and that makes the dream seem more real and reachable. And I think the thing is, we're now in a very amazing era. I tell people jokingly, but seriously, bro, I'll be like, man, we could go on Instagram and find out what's going on in the shade room, and we do. Or we can
We
find out what
do.
the latest is with the beef between 50 and T.I., two grandfathers.
Mhm.
Or we could go and see about, well, what are they doing in Boston? Or what type of scholarship opportunities? Or you know what? Let me try to find some lawyers in my area as a way to try to network and connect. And so we're now in an amazing era that maybe me and you didn't get a chance to have exposure to, where you're literally one DM away from being able to get an internship or getting a question answered or being able to find out what somebody is doing in the field who looks like you that's being successful. And
And,
so one of the
oftentimes I say, even if those are the things that you are interested in, right? Like 50 Cent has a gang of lawyers, right? I know some of his lawyers, right? Like there's
he got
plenty of
lawyers.
exactly. He got lawyers. But the thing is, the point of that is if those are the things that you're interested in, figure out a way to integrate all of the things that you're wanting to be into your interests. And I'll say it all the time, we can't necessarily dream what we don't see, but at the same time, the law, when you talk about being a lawyer, it touches everything. Like it literally intersects with every single thing imaginable. So you can always find a way to incorporate your interest into your pursuit of your JD.
Absolutely, you guys. We live and in full effect with Attorney Demetrius McLeod, aka the Lethal Sniper, y'all. I want to also touch base with you because one of the things I tell people is, the first start of this journey, we have people who listen in who are so many different steps. We have people right now who are retaking the LSAT and things like that. So we always ask LSAT questions and find out what was that experience like for you. Because I tell people, man, it's not an enjoyable experience, but it's not supposed to be.
Yeah, it's not. And it's hard. It's hard, but it's fair. It's something that can be done. We've seen it done. You're seeing me, right? You're seeing others. You're seeing the people who've done it before you. So you know that it's possible, but it's not easy. And I don't think any of it is supposed to be easy, right? Like they say, when you work hard for something, you appreciate it even more when it happens. And I can say, especially when you're preparing for the LSAT, it's a humbling experience. I'll tell you, it's a very humbling experience. It'll make you appreciate it so much more, but it does not end. Like once you practice and you study and you pass that LSAT or at least get the score that you're aiming for, you
Yeah.
get into law school. And then you enter into law school and you like, whew, wait, this is not what I thought this
Yeah.
was. This is not like any other type of schooling that I ever experienced. And it's not, right? You've never experienced school where you only take one exam, one test, and it makes your entire grade, makes or break you. That's not something that we're used to when we're, in K through 12 or even undergrad, right? Like you're usually taking unit quizzes and unit tests, but when you're in law school, you probably only have that one test that really determines your entire grade for that
And I
class.
think
That's something we
oftentimes,
don't talk about.
we'll keep it 100. I think oftentimes one of the bigger challenges that comes with the LSAT is, let's keep it a buck, for most people who are applying to law school, college really wasn't that hard.
Yeah.
Or high school really wasn't that hard. Or elementary wasn't so hard. And so the first time that you have to actually apply yourself is with a test where literally there's no such thing as Hail Mary or half court shots. You're going to get in what you put in, and that's it.
Hmm.
And literally it's BS proof, like I used to tell people. But after we do the LSAT, then we have to choose schools. And I mean, bro, I want you to go ahead and take us back because I think like oftentimes knowledge of schools is so important.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I tell my students that sometimes the reason why they don't get accepted or are not in school for a cycle is because they didn't expand their options. So
Hmm.
how was it for you when it came down in this process of trying to find schools? We know Howard is definitely one of one, but how did we even get to that point of choosing them?
Yeah, that's a good question. Truly, I feel like I always, you know, felt my spirit pulling me to wanting to attend Howard. Like that, like hands down, Howard was always, if not number one, at least top three. I think sometimes we get caught up because of the legal space,
Yeah.
and how we operate is just numbers based, and it's one of those things where you're always predicting your success based off of the school that you go to, the LSAT score that you received, the actual ranking that you have while in law school. That I began to focus more on other top schools as well, right, along with Howard, and that almost pulled me to different paths. Like I
Yeah.
almost selected different schools because I had other people in my ear saying like, oh no, in order to be this, you had to do this, right? Which I can tell you very much so isn't the case, but one of the things that I'd say when I began to choose Howard as my law school, the law school that I wanted to make sure I attended, and it was by the grace that I even attended, um, I knew everybody who came before me was just made of greatness.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I appreciate the most of my Howard community, but also just the excellence that it breeds, I really wanted to appreciate the fact of being taught by so many giants in the space who were Black.
Yeah.
We had, and we had ethnicities of all kind, but I mean predominantly Black professors, and I mean these are scholars who are killing it in the game, and I mean in every fashion, you are seeing Black faces, and that came with the perspective. And I remember attending my visits on campus visits and seeing the way that they taught their classes and the posture of how their cold calls were, and it almost made you feel like family. Like this is how you're
Proud.
preparing for your class. Yeah, you're really like I'm being. How like mama and auntie and grandma and everybody is
Family.
teaching you these lessons, and they're putting it in a perspective that only they can make you understand. That's how I felt, and that was just as a visiting student, like a prospective student. So I
You
could
had
only
ready to come in
imagine
on visit day, where I'm
on
paying
visit day.
judge.
What does every day look like? So, that was like one of the things that made it hands down. I'm like, okay, this is not an environment that, and I went to a PWI for undergrad. So, being able to enter into, a space of Blackness, but Black excellence, I'm like, there's no other choice. Like hustle is going to be the only way. And then when you talk about the price, right? The price that it we can get into how we afford law school or not,
Yeah.
right? Because I think that's another hurdle, right? We talk about the LSAT, which is a hurdle. It's not your prophecy. It's just a hurdle, right? It's that one hurdle that you need to get over in order to really pursue the dream, but it's not your prophecy. And I hate to hear. I again mentor law students all the time, and I think that on the journey to becoming a law student, you obviously have to pass the LSAT. You have to at least take the LSAT, right? There's no real passing. But I hear all the time students who get hung up on one score, or they feel like they need to get a particular score. And I was one of them. Like I felt like I needed to get a particular score before I applied. And I would think, okay, if I don't get this score, I'm going to defer. If I don't get this score, I'm going to. The LSAT is a hurdle. It's not a prophecy. I promise you, you can get into law school if you take that LSAT. If you need to take it again, take it again. But it's not your prophecy. It is not. It just opens the door. That's it.
I mean,
It just
what
it
did Aaliyah
opens the
say?
door.
First, you don't succeed, dust yourself off and
Dust
try.
yourself off and try again. That's what Aaliyah said.
And the
Detroit
thing is,
finest.
you guys out there, I want you to understand it's like every lawyer, well, most lawyers and judges, rock and rolls, leading firms, they've retaken the LSAT, and it's okay. And it's fine if you have to reapply to law school.
Right.
Oftentimes, in the process, the biggest critic or barrier that you have to get through is the ones that are self made, not anything that's before you. Now, one of the things I want to ask you, like, for example, you laid out the tea about Howard, and I love Howard Law School. I have a lot of students who are there now. But I want you to tell me what advice would you give to our first gen law school applicants? What do they need to be looking for when they're trying to pick a school? Because I think like so many people make the mistake. Because I've had students man, Anthony, I got into T14, but that ain't a fit. I don't
Yeah.
like it here. So what should they be looking for in trying to find a school?
Yeah, I definitely think that when it comes down to picking your school, right, the school that you're going to fit into, every so I've sat on the admissions board too, during my time of seeing how it looks on the other side. And when you talk about, just the competitiveness of law school, but then also the application process, it can make or break where you're accepted to. And you are finding more and more now, especially because like denying students is just becoming such a thing, that's trying to be avoided. You'll get waitlisted sometimes before are denied. And that's sometimes due to the fact that you just have so many options. But when you're looking to see like what school you're needing to go to, you need to look at class sizes, right? You need to know how many students are being accepted for this class. A lot of times at Howard was having to, we would have to deny a ton of students just for the fact that we only could, accompany like a certain amount of class sizes. Like, I want to say like it wasn't until maybe 2020 or 2019 class that it became more than 150. It was like class sizes of 50 each section, right? Like there isn't. So you have to look at how big are the sections, how are the class sizes, what are the makeups of like the resources that you're being provided, while you're in those classes. Are there going to be more practical learning experiences that you could potentially, have? A lot of people come into this idea of attending law school and think they're also going to work during their 1 year. You probably don't want to go to a law school that's going to allow you to work during your 1 year, because that really should just be a laser focused time for you to really master not only adjusting to law school, but really the work that's going to be needed for you to pass the bar. There's that, like most of your 1L classes are all going to be bar prep, bar studied classes and subjects. That's going to be a big thing.
And you make a good point. And the reason why he says it, you guys, is listen, if you guys don't know, law school, there's this thing called a curve. I'm sure you heard of it. And
And we could talk about it.
with a class, and man, you remember those days in college where you could just rely on the dummies, on the people that ain't gonna come to class, the skipping. Now, I didn't like that in law school, fam. Not at all. And so because of that, the reason why Demetrius is saying when you work and do law school, that means that you have less time to focus on your studies. And that means you're competing with people who are utilizing all of their time to focus on their studies. And so that's going to make it harder for you to get good grades because you're competing with someone who has more time and you don't have a lot of time and you don't even really know. I'm going to say it, bro. You can correct me if I'm wrong. When you go to law school, you initially don't know how to read and you don't know how to study.
Not the right way, at least. You got to
That's
almost
all,
unlearn all of it.
and those are very expensive mistakes. So if you're going to work, you may want to do law school part-time. And there are a lot of part-time programs for you to be able to consider. But at
Mhm.
the core of it, what Demetrius is saying, you got to do your research, y'all. We got to do more than just look at the websites. We got to do more than just go to the tables and pick up the flyers. Everything that Demetrius talked about, he went to go visit Howard. Go visit your schools. Go talk to them. A lot of law schools offer informational interviews where you can do those virtually. You need to find out about the schools who you're about to make an investment in because you want to make sure you're selecting a school not only for you to have an amazing social experience, even though you shouldn't, but mostly for you to be able to thrive in. Because really, law schools is about your selection should be based on what school can I do my best.
That's right.
That
And
means
it's not always about the prestige. I feel like it's about the fit. It's about the finances, right? Again, how are you paying for it? It's really about your future too. Think about what you're wanting or what type. And I won't say you have to know this, right? You don't need to know what kind of lawyer or what type of law you're going to practice. I didn't, right? I didn't fully know, or the only thing I knew was I was one day going to be a law firm owner. That was my ultimate goal. But at the end of the day, you don't need to know what type of law you're going to practice, but you need to know what type of law firms or what type of employment opportunities you could potentially have when you're exiting. At the end of the day, we're going to law school, hopefully, to get a job. I would say that would be my main concern, is to get a job. So what kind of jobs do they offer, right? How am I going to pay this debt back after I graduate? You know, those are all the things that I feel beyond the prestige, right? Beyond the fit, beyond the actual, surface things that we sometimes pick schools for. That was the biggest thing. Scholarship offerings. What type of scholarships are they offering? If they're offering scholarships, can you negotiate? Do you have access to your deans, right? If you need to have a something put in compliance, or if there's anything that needs to be placed, can you reach or access people? Like, you have to look at all things. Do your research.
I hope you guys are catching all this tea, y'all. Listen, there are 197 law schools. All we need is one, fam.
Only
All
one.
one, but you want to make sure that you're selecting the school that you're going to be able to do your best. One thing about this lawyer journey, if you don't learn very quick, I think the LSAT initially teaches you, is nobody's going to gift you anything.
Yeah.
Resources are going to be there, but it's going to be up to you to be able to utilize them. So please utilize this information so that way you could be able to avoid a lot of the mistakes that we made on our journey.
Yeah.
And that could be great. And so one of the things I love talking about is, think about it, fam, the first day of law school. You roll up in there, you done seen the movies, and now it's you. Oh my God, this is the place. I feel the ancestors. You go take your seat. I want you to tell me what that first day of class was like. I mean, cause I gotta hear it. I gotta see what it was like, fam. Did we rock a suit on the first day?
No, I didn't. I ain't go that crazy. I ain't got to. You know, I quickly found out how much a facade the law school. Yeah, you can still go and look your best, but if you talk to the people that was closest to me, they would probably see the stress in my everyday attire. Like, literally, there was a time where I'm like, dang, you look homeless. Like, have you made it home? Do you have a home? Because I was probably in sweats for the
Yeah.
like, especially depending on like what time of the year. Now, if we're talking first day, I probably was presentable, right? Just because you gotta go into class, and you hopefully have to, stick out to the point where at least the professor don't want to pick on you. It look
Yeah.
like you got a little bit together, so I was presentable maybe the first day of class, but I quickly found out how much a facade, the L Woods, the we're going in and we're gonna have, a suit on every day. You're not gonna have time to put on a suit every day. I'm gonna tell you. If it wasn't an event that I was going to, I was not wearing a suit.
I think I think the thing that was always funny about law school is the only time you saw people dress up for was the interview days.
That's
you
it.
sometimes some people you barely even hold on.
Like, who
Huh?
was that? No, I wasn't putting on a suit unless there was something that I needed to dress up for. I'm rocking sweats, a t-shirt, probably, some sort of hoodie, something comfortable. Because from there, I'm probably going to be in the library, or I'm doing some sort of studying for the remainder of the evening. And you're not comfortable all the time in a suit.
Sweat life for real, for real,
Yeah,
for real.
for sure, for
Now,
sure.
one of the things I always love to ask you guys is I tell people that when you guys go to law school, you have what I call, and I had this moment too, where I call the oh sh moment, where you realize, like, damn, that worked in college, but that ain't about to work right here. I'm gonna have to make changes. So I always love to hear you guys' story when you realize, like, oh, I mean, I gotta level up. So tell us that story, how that was for you.
You know what? Mine was actually it was it was probably a moment that we all could relate to, but maybe not, the thing that comes to mind. My oh shit moment was note taking.
Mm.
Like, truly, note taking was one of the things that I'm like, oh wait, I have to step my game up with taking notes or outlining or whatever it looked like, because law school moves quick.
Yes.
And it's not often that the professor is going to slow down because of your delay in mastery, right? And we can talk about, like, everyone may not understand what mastery is yet, but like, they're not going to slow down for mastery. So you're going to have to take that on yourself. And the way that you do that is through your notes and through your outlines. And sometimes you can be privileged enough to have some outlines passed on to you, right? So you can follow through, which, thank God, I had a great, class of people before me to help me through that moment. But it was a point in time where I was, having to really say to myself, like, whoa, Meech, like, you ain't doing a good job capturing what these classes are putting down. So I had to really step up my game on note taking, because again, you don't really take a test, right? Like, you're not getting your knowledge tested throughout this semester when you're in law school. You have that one test at the end. One test is determining. You may have a midterm depending on the class and the professor who's offering it. Otherwise, it's up to you to, almost seek out past exams or past, test to really test yourself in your mastery. So, when you are building your outline or when you are synthesizing, certain things, you have to rely on your notes and the things that you're bringing in class. And it was a point in time where I was like, oh, whoa, you have been going through life in school, not taking the best
Yeah.
notes.
Yeah.
And for me, that was like a wake up call because I'm like, I can't continue to go through the semester nor my law school journey in this way. So I really had to reform the way that I thought about note taking. And, maybe you writing down only the thing you think is important and you're missing a whole block of different things that really is important too. So that was my moment.
Because I feel like the purpose of law school is it forces you to be self-aware.
For sure.
You have to become aware of yourself in regards to what do I have to do to hold myself accountable to be better. And I think, I'll be honest with you. I feel like, most people who want to be lawyers, we've been blessed with the gift of gab. But the thing about it is, in this lawyer journey, you can't BS your way out of anything. The production is what's going to speak for itself. And the fact that I love it because we have to have those oh shit moments.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're flying blind, and then it's gonna be too late. And I totally remember that situation happening with me when I was just like, I think we had a midterm that wasn't graded. And I went to go meet with the professor because I'm like, I knew all the main points. Come on.
Right. You think.
Bro, she showed me the sample answer and Shorty pulled out 27 pages.
Humbling
And
experience.
you just realize I am not worthy. Let me go study. I am sorry that I came in here and
That I
wasted
wasted your time.
because you begin to realize it's like there is another level, but law schools would not admit you. They didn't think that you could get to that level.
Yeah. And
It's,
you're capable.
and I think the amazing thing, and I'm sure you could talk about this with your mentees, is being able to witness the transformation. Because I saw some of my students at the Black Law Student Association event in St. Louis last week. And I remember them when they were law school applicants. They
Yeah.
over here competing in mock trial fans. Shorty got the suit on. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, Kansas, okay, Tallahassee. And it's just like, it's amazing because you end up finding yourself
Yeah.
and you become secure in yourself. And the only way that happens is you have to go through the toughness, you have to go through the grind, and you have to be able to survive it because that's where that strength is. And so you realize, oh man, all right,
Mhm.
I gotta level up. But I
Yeah.
always love those amazing moments in law school too, when you realize, wow, I could do this. When did
Yeah.
you realize that I could do this? What happened?
You know what? So one, that's a great point because I feel like, navigating toughness while still having to maintain and preserve yourself is huge. And I'll tell you, like, one a year, unless you're like truly at a point where you are ready to cut back and cut off every single thing in order to navigate all of the things that's thrown at you, that's like what separates, I feel like, because real talk, resilience is big, but you can't burn out.
Yeah.
You can't burn out. And a lot of, like, many times, I would say oftentimes, especially even with my current mentees, but I'll say even some of my classmates, right? Like, you find yourself burning out because you approach law school like a sprint, like you're going, like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and you're going to do every single thing, and you're trying to do every single thing at once. And that causes a ton of tension. But I think that law school and the profession of law in general will demand toughness, but there's a difference between resilience and being resilient and being depleted, right? Because I think that when it comes down, like, you can be strong without losing yourself in the process, but if you were to lose yourself, none of it matters. Like, you're not going to finish the race. You're not going to, get to a point to where you can actually say, yo, I did this. And I think for me, it was important for me to surround myself with people who were, like that,
Yeah.
like iron sharpen iron, type of situations, so that we can actually like know what toughness looks like, but then also the preservation of like who you are, what you need to do, how you maintain through this. If you like going to the gym, go to the gym.
Yeah.
If you like actually, going for a run, find time to go for a run. If you may need to take a day, just to recalibrate, like do that, but you can't lose yourself. Otherwise, your toughness will still break you. No matter how tough you are, it still breaks you. And that was, the moment for me. And it happened early on. Like it helped happen early in my law school journey, because, you do sometimes find yourself going at it and trying to figure everything out at once. And not all the time can you do that. Not all the time is it worth doing that. And I think that that was like, the moments where I'm like, okay, I've had, you know the things that is making me feel like I'm pretending that I have it all together, and nothing hurts, and I'm not stressed out about everything, but at the same time you're feeling and carrying all the weight, and it's showing up anyway. You ain't noticing it, but the way that your understanding is being noticed, the code calling that the professors is calling, and they're probably in their head like, what the hell were you reading? Like what? Like did you like what do your notes say? Let me see your notes. You
You heard
have to.
me? I taught you this.
Exactly. Like I said that. So I mean, and I'm sure a lot of things are different now because we have so many more resources. That students can probably rely on. But yeah, it's not about being unbreakable. Like you definitely have to know that you need to preserve yourself through the toughness of everything that you're doing, because it is it's a career, it's a journey, it's a profession that is heavily weighed. Like it will weigh on you. It'll keep you up at night. You'll have moments where you question if you belong. You'll have to admit even out loud and find a way forward through it for sure.
It's funny when you said you'll think about it when you sleep. I said, dang, can I ever stop thinking about it when I sleep?
Can
I
you get to sleep?
I tell people jokingly, I said, they tell me, what should I do before I go to law school? I said, sleep. Enjoy
Sleep.
the summer.
Enjoy the
Do
sleep.
nothing. Do
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
Because it'll be the last summer that you're going to have like that, probably for the next 6 years.
I say that all the time. Everyone's always asking, what can I do? What can I do before preparing to law school? What can I do this summer to prepare for law school? I'm like, nothing. There's no preparing for law. Like there's no preparing for law school. All you could prepare for is that LSAT. If you've taken that LSAT and you're now admitted and planning to attend law school, it's nothing you can do. Some people say read and do. You're gonna have years of reading at this point. You're gonna have years of reading. I used to tell people this, but I feel like now, the new generation coming is probably already mastered this. But the thing I used to tell people was to practice typing. I used to tell people, practice typing. Like, if you're going to do anything, like, just type. Like, type more, get on your computer more, type, so that you can be proficient and fast in typing, because that's going to come not only important to your note taking, but it's also
Oh,
going to come to those exams that are timed. And when I tell you, you're going to be typing on those exams. So I used to say that, but no, I agree. Like, do absolutely nothing. There's nothing you can do to prepare for law school.
bro,
Seriously.
you said that thing about typing. I immediately thought about that scene in Bruce Almighty with Jim Carrey
Yeah.
typing and typing. I was like, yep, that's exactly how it is. And I think
Yeah.
I want to propose this thing. I want you to tell me what you think about it. I think oftentimes the biggest challenge is you have like these three things you're trying to balance: fear,
Hmm.
and that fear fuels you to go beyond limits that you've never been before. Self care, and then balancing your ego at the same time. Because I feel like when we start law school, the ego's on 100.
Yeah.
But then when we get broken, trying to find that self confidence with the fear and self care is this a huge bundle that people just struggle with.
Yeah. I'd say this because I think, and I advocate against it all the time, but, this profession, and especially law school, I was Student Bar Association president as well while I was in law school. And one of the main things that I focused on was, this profession really does have a mental health crisis.
Yeah.
And it's prevalent in so many ways, right? Like I think depression, I think anxiety, which is one of the main reasons why I found myself, leaving Big Law, right? To substance abuse, I seen that as early as, preparing, but also going through law school. I mean, even down to, Adderall, like, it could be abusing of many things, but it's real. And I think the biggest thing with that is to protect your peace, like your career depends on it, but beyond that, your life,
Yeah.
because your life, true, it does. Your life depends on it. So I think when it comes to balancing all those things, right? Because fear is going to lead to anxiety, right? Because that's going to be just your mind filling in the gaps of so many things that may not even be real, right? But you're just doing it and filling those gaps in out of fear, which is going to lead to your anxiety, which is going to lead to depression and all the other things. But your ego, right? Like I know you mentioned your ego is going to be the main thing that's crushed in
Yeah.
all of it. Because law school is a humbling space. It's humbling, and your ego and pride is going to be crushed every single day. I've seen some of the loudest, most egotistical, most I know it all people crushed, crushed.
And I,
And now we really abusing everything. I'm abusing
yeah.
substance. I'm
Yeah.
abusing,
I, I,
so
talking for you guys out there. We're not trying to scare you. We're trying to make sure that you're prepared.
for
We want
sure.
to enter into this space. We entered into this space blind. We want you guys to enter prepared. Because I did not realize how much substance abuse was a problem in law school until finals week.
Yeah.
And you're in that library and you see some things that I ain't see it. I'm
Yeah.
going back here. Woo! People sleeping in the libraries, sleeping in their cars in the parking lot. So they say, I don't want to go home. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna sleep in my car. It's in the library right there. But it all works at the end. And so one of the things I love talking about too. So now I say around second year we figured it out. And so you got second year you figure out what you have to do. And then
Yeah.
third year you just ready to go.
I'm
And
out of there. Yeah.
so now we graduated, fam. Now we preparing for the bar. We done heard about the bar. We done heard all the. So go ahead and take us behind the scenes, fam, and talk about what it was like preparing for the bar. And you definitely got to tell us how it was when you found out that you passed.
Man. So one, I'll tell you to what you just said. So second year, you definitely you moving. You feel like you got it together. You done figured it out. You now know how to take an exam. Third year, I'm ready to graduate. We graduate. We know though, upon graduating, we have to take the bar. But in my case, you ready to graduate, and boom, COVID happens.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. So studying and preparing for the bar for me was endless. Like I felt like it literally never ended. Like the exam kept getting like scheduled, pushed, rescheduled. So we were studying for months. Like think about like constant fear and survival of preparing for the bar and doing it and still having to wake up every day, check the news, see COVID crisis, increase, deaths happening, increase. The world is ending. People fighting over toilet paper.
Yeah.
Like it was a weird, crazy time. But I think through the perseverance of it all and through the struggles of many things, right? Deaths. Again, people being hospitalized. People who were hospitalized not even being able to have anyone by their side and visit loved ones and all the things. I think it made for when that test finally was there and you were able to finally take it and we were able to finally get our results back. It was the feeling of just like almighty accomplishment, and it was nothing but the grace. Like truly, it was one of the at the time biggest accomplishments, the feelings of accomplishment that I felt like I had ever achieved. And again, this was me having graduated top of my class, all the things, but truly, I felt like the chapter never fully closed because we didn't get to have a graduation. We didn't get to walk across the stage. We had a virtual Zoom graduation. Like it was a lot that was stripped away from us. So it was a very surreal moment. And then it was like, okay, immediately thrown into the practice. And then we're thrown into work, but we're also thrown into that virtually. So it was a lot of adjusting, right? But I think the beauty of law school and the beauty of becoming a lawyer is you have to stay agile. You have to stay ready. I had a professor that always, kept you hear all the time, you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready, but you stay ready before day one, before day one. And if you stay ready before day one, once day one comes, it's like you unstoppable. So, that was one of the moments that I'd say was very memorable, but it was memorable for so many different reasons.
I mean, the world stopped. I mean,
Good.
and man, I remember when COVID was happening, we had other jurisdictions just being like, y'all can just go ahead and come in. Y'all ain't got to take the bar. I know I
They
have a
just needed people. Like they're like, okay, we
like,
like when is this gonna end? Yeah, no, it was crazy. It was crazy. So you just have to know that.
Washington, they allowed their graduating class to pass through. They didn't have to take the bar at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, is this about to happen everywhere? For real?
Right. Right. I already knew it wasn't happening everywhere. I'm like, you gotta think about why the bar is even in existence, right? Why any of this is it the ABA, law
Do we
school,
want to
like
go there? Do we want to go there? Are we ready
we
for
can
that?
look, we can, I'm a social engineer now, so we can go. But no, yeah, I already knew that wasn't gonna happen. They were not about to let us in there that easy, not
I
at
mean,
all.
imagine though, like that would have been something. It definitely would
Yeah,
have.
for sure,
But
for sure.
one of the things is like when we hear about big law, I think it's a term that a lot of people don't understand. So can you break it down to them? Because I think when they think of big law, they just think about tall buildings, big offices, and something like suits.
Yeah, I mean, real talk, like being someone who came into law school, and I will say again, first generation lawyer, I had no idea what not one of these white men names on any of these law firms door what they were. Like I had no idea, who and what a firm was that was considered big law. But if I had to sum it up, like big law refers to the largest firms in the country, right? In the world, most times. Like typically these firms have, 1,000 or more attorneys, right? Sometimes 1,000 or close to 1,000 attorneys per office. They have multiple offices. They have corporate clients with deep pockets. They are usually defending some of the biggest, organizations or corporations or whatever, that looks like in the world. We're talking firms that represent Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies handling the billion-dollar deals, the biggest forms of litigation. They're defending all the high stakes, high complex legal, matters that exist, is what I'd say big law is. And it's usually done at, again, that highest level of intellect. I mean, brilliant, brilliant legal minds. And I think that was like one of the main things that attracted me to, pursuing it once, I realized that I had the opportunity was the ability to surround myself with the brilliant minds of the law, like of the space. I mean, these are the ones who indoctrinated many of the things that we will follow in the law. And a lot of times they're coming from big law spaces. Even if you're talking about government directors or DOJ, whomever it is who leads a lot of those spaces, usually are coming from big law and going to government and maybe even going back private into big law at higher rankings. So when you think of big law, I always think of the V10, right? V being Volt, right? One of my previous firms, Kirkland and Ellis. You got Skadden Arps. You have Latham Watkins. Again, these are all names that I have never known anything about, but for law school and approaching big law. But a lot of big law is it's expanding. I'd say a lot of firms have been growing and expanding in the way in which their practices operate. But big law is really where corporations go. It's where the high stakes go. That's when legal matters are high and the legal bills are usually unlimited.
Now, one thing I'll ask is when you think about representation, you went from the Mecca to now going back into a space where you were one of very, very few. How was that experience? And what advice would you give to other aspiring lawyers or recent law grads interested in going into that space as well? He's like, how do I say this without being me?
Yeah, I mean, because the thing is, first day at Big Law, like I walked into that office and I looked around, and more times than not, I would realize that I was the only black attorney in the room. And not just the room, sometimes depending on the space, because I did a lot of recruiting also for the big law firm that I worked at, which was Kirkland & Ellis. And sometimes like I was the only, black lawyer even doing that. So um, it's you have to approach it by refusing to shrink,
Wow.
is what I say. I didn't code switch. Like that was one of the things that I feel like I never did. Or if I did, it was always just a natural, switching that I pretty much had. But I never intentionally code switched to make people more comfortable with me or who I was. I didn't dim my light at all. I did the work. I, tried to be as prepared. And I think when it comes down to, our blackness, we always have to strive for excellence. Like that's the way that like we have to do it. I don't like to, reiterate the thing that we got to be like 2, 3 times, 10 times better, because I think that we should just want to be our best, right? And when you turn inward and be your best, typically because of mediocrity, we usually are already better. So I try, I try to
Y'all,
use them that.
y'all caught that?
Listen, and I think that that's like really what it comes down to. So I feel like, I just made myself undeniable, and I think that that was gravitated towards, and it did work. And I feel like I had to separate a lot of that as I went home. And what made I think my start into what Big Law is in just that space, there wasn't always a going home. A lot of times we were working from home, and you have to then re you have to reposition yourself, because now the lines blur, right? Like the guidelines, the boundaries, the abilities that you are obviously willing to go, the extent that you're willing to go, and what they will continue to push you to do, because they're going to get every dollar that you're getting out of Big Law out of you in blood. I'm gonna tell you, you putting in the work, you're putting in the hours, and you are getting that paycheck by blood for sure, and sweat and tears. But you have to like then recalibrate yourself. So I just learned to separate my excellence from their expectations and create boundaries, and just know that I wasn't there to shrink myself, and I wasn't there to prove that I belonged, because I had earned it. I had done what I needed to do to be there at the table, and I was there. And I was there with, again, the T14s and the top threes and the top, like we were all at the same place at the same table. And that was the shift for me. So I just kept, myself grounded in that. And I just tried to refuse from burning myself out, but I didn't shrink to fit in that space. I expanded that space to fit me, honestly.
I
And
love it.
luckily I had a community and a tribe that continued to reinforce, what we had always known and had knew we were capable of. And because we were all in that space together, we were able to really make sure that we kept each other grounded. And that was the beauty of it.
That is beautiful. Now, the thing I think is awesome is, well, I feel like almost from the moment that we want to become lawyers, we're programmed to work for other people. And that's supposed to be like the litmus of success. Like, oh, we want to be a partner. But it's amazing as we continue in the profession and, like you said, put in that blood and that sweat, you begin to realize I'm putting blood and sweat in, and I'm not getting any, I'm not creating a legacy.
Yeah.
And when did you have that shift where you was like, I could do this on my own? I want to hang my own shingle. What happened to lead to that?
Yeah. So, going to law school, entrepreneurship, I've always been entrepreneurial, so that was always my initial goal as it related to my pursuit in the law. It wasn't until my 1 year and obviously starting law school that it was kind of indoctrinated that like big law was a thing. Like I hadn't even really even thought about it in a way. Like I knew the corporate spaces and climbing corporate ladders, but I never really connected the dots to what that looked like in law. right? So the concept of big law I hadn't really fully even considered until I realized and saw that, like, oh wait, I'm kind of I'm kind of shit. It's like I kind of can't do this. So I chose to do it because I had people above me in my ear, mentors who just really I'd say planted the seed of just like this was something to do that could continue to open doors, but then can also allow me to train one on somebody else's dollar.
Yeah. I think your volume went out, bro. Is it? Yeah. Is it
No, still gone?
we good. We good now.
We good? Okay, cool. No, y'all know what that was. But yeah, learning from the most brilliant minds that I figured, even if I were to go out on my own, which again was the plan, that it wouldn't hurt. And I would make some money right away doing it, you know? And what better way to learn how to operate and build a firm but working at the best, right? So I figured that was, the best thing for me at the time. And initially I'm like, I'm going to do 2 years and I'm going to leave. Like that was what we were also told, right? For us anyway. They were saying, for black lawyers, we weren't making it in a big law for more. I think the average was a year and a half, 2 years anyway, because it's not an easy feat. Like it's not something you just go in. But I never went in with the aspiration of being partner. I never went in with the goal of I want to be partner of Kirkland and Ellis. Like it never was, something that I even communicated to anyone. So I had to swallow that and know that whatever I do, I'm going to do this for a time period, and I'm going to take that and put it into what I was wanting to build, which was legacy. Like I wanted to have legacy, and unless my name was going to be next to Kirkland or Ellis, then it wasn't going to be the legacy that I wanted to create, nor the partnership that I would want to consider. So yeah, no, that was one of the things that I just knew that I wanted to do coming in, and I stayed much longer than I truly initially anticipated, but I still think that it all worked out and it all played out the way that it should have. And yeah,
Do you
I,
ever
I,
sit back and just be like I did it? Like that's my name on the door.
yeah,
Like I mean, it has to be an amazing moment to think that you have a firm, you have a staff who has families, and
yeah.
you. This is all based off of the foundation of your dream. I mean, when did you realize it's just like, man, you just want to go, man, thank God. Like, this is amazing.
Every time I have to run payroll, no, no, seriously, I will say. I used to think becoming a lawyer and graduating law school and then, graduating, top of my class. I used to think that those were, or even like making to big law, those are like my big accomplishments. But when I sit back and I think about what I'm building brick by brick currently, like what better way of showing, what better representation of black excellence? Like that's when I really sit back and I say like, yo, I did it. And to your point, having people who rely on you to even, put food on their table, right? Like having to pay every other week. And families that rely on your success, right? Like my success matters to me because it matters for so many others, right? And I think that that's like the real form of like excellence for me and my success, man. And I say like when I talk about like the expectations and the refusing to shrink and all of it, I just feel like none of this in the journey and the pursuit of your JD is about being perfect. And I think that is just a it just
That's so clear.
it, none of this, the pursuit of any of this, but especially your JD is about being perfect. It isn't about being perfect. It's about being present, right? Which I'd say with big law didn't always give me the ability to do. I hated it. I regretted it. A lot of it, it's about being prepared, right? And we learn that, right? We're usually type A people. I always say I'm a type B personality, but we're usually type A people. So you want to be prepared and you want to strive for excellence, and then a persistence. You want to be able to be persistent to what you're doing and strive for that excellence. But man, when I tell you, building brick by brick and showing and quietly being exactly who you're known and meant to be, that's truly my wow.
Because I think about it, I remember I was raised, my godfather used to tell me, he said, Anthony, the only thing you have is your name.
Yeah.
And protects your name. He said, make sure that whatever anybody attaches to your name is something that could be good, high character, quality.
Yeah.
And just think about it, bro. It's like full circle for you because you went from being mentored by Attorney Jones to now being the mentor to somebody else who wants to become a lawyer. And that's just like it's an amazing journey of self-reflection and growth.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I think back to the point of, the whole it's not about being twice as good, to get half as far mentality. I think that it really comes down to being undeniable, you know, being undeniable so they have no choice but to make room for you. And I think that if anybody had to hear me and take anything from this is you belong here, not because someone gave you permission, not because you checked the box, not because any other thing that you feel it just makes you entitled to being here, but it's because you earned it. It's because you put in the work. It's because you conquered that LSAT. It's because you made sure those applications were turned in on time. It was because you refused to quit when it got hard, and that does not end. That doesn't end. You're a representation of someone else. You're a representation for someone else to see, and don't you ever forget that. And I think that's the biggest thing. You belong here, not because someone let you in.
I think that's beautiful. And bro, like, on this journey, it's filled of ups and downs. And I swear, man, them downs be hurting. But, right now, I say about in this period, we got, law school applicants getting rejection letters.
Mm.
Hurts. We got people getting the LSATs back, not going well. Also around this time, when you went back to law school, you notice some people didn't come back because they got dismissed.
Yeah.
And of course, there's people who may be on academic probation or getting ready to take the bar next week. And I always love to end our show with you giving them a word of encouragement. Just take them to church, bro.
Man, honestly, I'll say it right there. Like the things that we talk about, the things that we see, these things are raw, they're real. But the main thing is it's grounded in your story. We don't need to be overly polished. We don't need to feel like we need to show up in these spaces a certain way. I feel like as long as you know who you are and that you can be somebody, whatever that looks like, if it is you going to the top law school, if it is you going to the top law firm, if it is you becoming someone like me who owns your own law firm, whatever that is because you are meant to do it and you belong there to do that because it is a representation for someone else. And we have to continue to be the representation to continue to increase this less than 5%.
Yeah. I mean,
You know,
bro, they said, listen, fam, God gave you the dream. But this dream is about more than just you, which is why you have to be present and you have to break through. If
absolutely.
you have somebody who's in afar, who you may not even know you, who's watching you, and you're going to be their source of why they're going to push through and believe that the dream of becoming a lawyer is real. Bro, I want to thank you for coming on to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, I really appreciate it. And for you guys out there, I always want to tell you guys, continue to fight for your lawyer dreams. You are not alone. You got this amazing brother right here on Instagram, Lethal
Yeah.
Shooter, who is
Absolutely, yeah, and continue to follow the journey. I would love to connect with anybody who's needing to connect or wanting to connect. You can follow me on socials at Attorney McLeod, literally IG, TikTok. I'm usually found on all platforms, LinkedIn, but Instagram, TikTok. You can always follow me, Attorney McLeod, the Legal Sniper, and I'm happy to connect and find time one on one. Anything I can do to again continue to help us increase this 5%, I'm willing to do it.
Absolutely. Thanks, my brother. And you guys will see you same time next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Keep fighting for your lawyer dreams. Peace and blessings.
Appreciate it, brother.